right, well, it is 12:04 and we're going to get started here today. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our May author series presented by the PCOM Library. I am Katrisa Gardner. I'm the Public Services Librarian located at the Moultrie campus in South Georgia. And this month, we are delighted to have Nicole Thompson, author, educator, mentor, and retired school psychologist. She has served children of every age from birth to emerging adulthood, from an early education teacher to an adjunct professor. Nicole is the creator of Reverse the Adverse, a trauma-informed care training for educators and mental health professionals working with urban students. The goal of Reverse the Adverse is to raise awareness of the impact that adverse childhood experiences have on urban students and to teach functional strategies to better serve a vulnerable population. Nicole is the author of Reach to Teach, 7 simple trauma-informed steps to help urban students engage, improve grades, and decrease disruptive behaviors overnight. She has spoken at the Harvard School Mental Health Conference, where she received the first standing ovation in 10 years. Nicole's work has also been featured in numerous publications, with her most recent appearance in Forbes. She completed her undergraduate degree at Temple University and her graduate studies at the Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine, Philadelphia, with her education specialist degree in school psychology. So without further ado, I would like to welcome and present to you our speaker for this hour, Nicole Thompson.
Thank you, Katrisa. That was a very warm welcome. And I want to thank you everyone for joining me today, spending this lunchtime with me. I do understand that your time is very valuable. So I just want to say that I appreciate you being here. So I'll just go ahead and jump right into it. And I want you to see the cover of the book. This is it right here, Reach to Teach, as Katrisa said. And what really made me pick, I'll start with the title. What made me pick the title of Reach to Teach is because with my talks with educators, I've realized that a lot of educators really feel hopeless when they're teaching and educating such a vulnerable population. I always get comments like, these kids don't want to learn, or I get questions like, what can I do? I'm not a mental health therapist. And that made me realize that there was a need for the information to be readily available, because my time at a large comprehensive high school here in Philadelphia showed me that it can be done, and it actually can be done overnight. And this is what I mean. I don't mean that all of the behaviors can decrease and everything will improve overnight like abracadabra. But what I do mean is that when you are mindful of your reaction to your students' behaviors, things will transform overnight. Because we have to think about not only what behaviors the students are demonstrating, we have to think about, are we bringing our trauma into the classroom as well? And are we responding to student behavior from that traumatized perspective? Because when you're coming from that perspective, it often causes a power clash. And we all know when you have a power clash, you're just struggling to see who has the most power. And quite often the behaviors and all de-escalate. So what made me write the book is during my time at the high school in Philadelphia, I saw a huge disconnect between the educators and the students. And I was in a pretty impoverished neighborhood. So we know that poverty brings a lot of trauma. It brings complex trauma of many different sorts, and it happens over and over and over again. And we can't expect students to just turn that off and come into the classroom as these perfect individuals that don't have anything going on at home, because that's just not the case. So what's happening is they're bringing these traumas into the classroom, and their behaviors are a cry for help. But if we don't understand that the behaviors are a cry for help, and instead misunderstand them as, just bad kids or attention seeking, then that's when we begin to change our minds and give the students more of what they need. And more of what they need is love. I always like to reference Dr. Bruce Perry, where he says the most powerful form of therapy is human love, because we often overcomplicate what it means to work with vulnerable individuals. But if we get back to the core of being in community and making everyone feel welcomed and loved, that's when we see a lot of the behaviors start to decrease. So when I started writing the book, I wanted to base it off of my professional development that Katrisa referenced in the beginning, reverse the adverse, because that was already formed. And I just knew that I had to get the information out to those that weren't taking the professional development. So the book is actually based on the same framework. It follows the same structure, where it starts off with reflections, because like I said, until we do our own internal work and start to question why we react the way that we do to certain behaviors, or why we feel as though we should stand in a place of authority and lead a dictatorship, is not going to really change anything in the classroom. We can't continue to point the fingers to the students and the parents and not take our part in it. So next, after the reflections, is all about educate. I educate about trauma. I educate about the specific types of trauma that we see in urban areas, because we know when you have pockets of poverty, there's many criminal behaviors, drug use, drug overdose, and so many other things that go on that students in more affluent areas don't have to worry about. Maybe they'll get, maybe they'll hear about someone that house was broken into or something of that sort. It's just not as major as we see in the urban areas because of the lack of resources and the lack of money and all. Next, I move on to visualize. And this is where I really delve deep into what behaviors to expect when we're in the classroom. Because a lot of times, if you don't know what to look for, again, you'll take these behaviors as attention seeking and take it personally. And the number one thing to do here when you're working with such a vulnerable population, you cannot take any of the behaviors personally. You just have to keep in mind, again, it's not about me, it's about what they're going through, and they don't know how to handle what they're going through. Because when you think about it, social emotional learning is just something new that's just starting to be introduced into the schools, really. And most students aren't educated in that area. So if their parents aren't aware of how to handle their emotional and mental health, their students and their kids aren't going to be able to manage their emotional health either. After visualize, I go into empathize. And this is where I really explain the difference between showing your students empathy and sympathy, because in my belief, I believe that sympathy can be a very slippery slope of feeling sorry for your students and then dropping those standards and not expecting much from them. And this can be dangerous because oftentimes, at my years at the high school, I've seen students just push through grade after grade. They're not able to read. They're not able to do math on an appropriate level. And it really is damaging to those students when we graduate them and they're not capable of doing the very basics. Next, I talk about reach. And this is when I really give practical strategies of how to reach your students that are going through so many social emotional problems at home. And it doesn't have to take a lot of time out of your day. It just really it takes planning on your part, which as educators and teachers, it is our job to plan. And it takes being intentional of doing those things every single day and really incorporating it into your lesson so it becomes a part of you, where you don't feel like this is just something else that I have to check off the list, something else that I have to do. Next, I go into strategize. And this is where I talk about all of the different strategies, the practical strategies that we can use to really reach our students and really feel comfortable in doing so. Again, not feeling that it's just something else you have to do. And then I ended up with empower, because we can do all of these things for the students, but if we don't empower them at the same time, all of the information that we're really using is falling on deaf ears. So in terms of the thought process behind it, that was really where I was thinking, like, okay, I have this great program here. Now I need to get it on paper. And how I started was I just took each of the sections from the framework and I made it into a chapter. So it has, the introduction, then it has, or one way or the other, the foreword, the introduction, and then chapters 1 through 7, and then we close it out. And everything in the book is scaffolded because, you have to build in order to learn. There's repetition in the book because I also understand that you need the information repeated in order for you to learn it. So let me think. The thought process, yes. So after I made the outline for the book, I just went through and I filled out each of the different points. So for chapter 1, I had reach, and then I had other points under it, and I just filled in each one. And I made sure that I committed myself to writing the book by setting a standing appointment with myself at 3:00 every Monday. And even when I didn't feel like it, I knew that I had to keep writing because in order for me to get this information out there, and I knew it was needed because so many people, so many educators expressed that they needed it, I had to hold myself accountable and show up, even when I didn't want to. The most challenging part of the process, to be honest, was just sticking to it. When you're writing a book, it can become overwhelming. There's lots of research to do. There's a time commitment that you have to have. And if there's no one there keeping you, holding you responsible for it, it's easy just to slip off and say, well, I don't want it to do it today, maybe next week. So it took about, I believe, a little over a year and a half to get it done, because I really had to commit to it. And, I had to figure out what I wanted in the book and what I didn't want in the book. Because when we talk about such a vulnerable population and the many different types of trauma and all, you can really fit in a lot of information for each of the chapters. You can honestly write a whole book for each of the chapters. So I really had to bring it in and keep it organized and keep it digestible also, because I didn't want to assume that everyone that was picking up the book has a degree that's similar to mine. Like many of the teachers that we have, they finish with their bachelor's and their bachelor's in education. So they don't have as much schooling as we do in the areas of psychology and mental health. So I had to keep that in mind as well. But once I really got into the groove of things, the information just started flowing. I was reminded of so many of the situations that I experienced with my students, and my students are throughout the book. Of course, I don't name their names or anything. These are all real life experiences that I went through with my students. And I always say that relationships are king, and I really do mean it, because I've been away from the school district now, is coming up on 4 years. And I still have really important relationships with a number of students. And these students call on me time and time again when they're coming across, major life decisions, when they're going to college, when they're graduating from college, when they're having babies. So these things that I'm speaking from, they are proven to work. It's just that you have to believe that it'll work. Because if your belief is that nothing ever works, I've tried everything, then that's what's going to happen. It's not going to work because you believe that it's not going to work. So a huge part of this work is believing that it's possible and believing that simple things such as love can really help the students heal and help them feel safe in the classroom environment and safe enough to learn. Because we know when students don't feel safe, the information that they're being taught, that is being presented to them, is really falling on deaf ears, because they're really thinking about all of the things that they have to deal with when they're at home. So it could be a domestic violence situation. It could be homelessness. It could be mental illness in a family. So many things that could be going on in the house that we just don't know about, that they're constantly thinking about, even when we're trying to teach them. Because as educators, most of the time we have the privilege of not have to worry about basic safety. You know, we live in places where are relatively safe. We're not hearing gunshots outside of our windows and things of that sort. So when we come to work, most of the time, that's exactly what we're focused on. We're focused on working. And if you've ever been through a tough situation, and I'm assuming that you have, when you're going through that, you're really not focused on your work or focused on other things as much as you should be, because you're trying to figure out how you're going to get yourself back into that equilibrium or back into that safety. Now, the most rewarding part of the book was just to actually get it out there. Like, because I had been wanting to write a book for the last, I want to say 4 years or so. And I was the co-author of a book, but that is nothing like writing an entire book yourself, because the book that I was a co-author in, I just had that one chapter, and everything, I was just led in everything. We had a lead author. She would set up the times. She told us how many words to write. So everything was dictated to us. So it was just like follow the leader. In this, it was completely different, but I'm glad that I got that experience, because I used that to help guide me write my own book. And I remember just thinking about how overwhelming it was to just think about writing an entire book. But what I had to realize was, I've written a book, just not an actual book. You know, the training was in a book, if you want to say it. And also when I was in grad school and I was writing those 25-page papers, if I could write a 25-page paper, I could write a book, you know. And I began to realize that and became empowered and really went with it that way. And I have to say that it took me quite some time to really believe in myself and to really believe that people wanted the information, that they wanted to actually hear what I was saying. But once I started to get that confirmation, it really gave me like a push to keep going forward and to get it out there. So the skills that I talked about, that I just mentioned, with being an author, a co-author and all, it just really brought everything full circle. And yeah, and it allowed me to move forward without pretty much on my own. I had help here and there from different colleagues and all when I was stuck, you know, in different areas, like, should I include this or should I include that? So I think you always need at least one person there where you could bounce ideas off to, or ask questions, or just try to, you know, just keep you focused on the actual goal of the book. Now, in terms of what I knew about the writing process, I think I was pretty informed because of the experience that I had with the other book. And leading up to it, once I got finished, like the Word document of it, because I just used Google Word and I wrote everything on Google Word. Once I got finished that part, one of my colleagues told me about Kindle Direct Publishing, and that made everything extremely easy, because what they do is they just take everything that's in your Word document and they transfer it over to make it into book form. So I really did appreciate that, because I had, you know, no experience in that area, like, you know, formatting and all of those things that you really don't think about until you get into the process. In terms of the book cover, I went to Fiverr. I told a couple of people what I was trying to do, the title of the book, and so on and so forth. And they just shot me back different ideas, and I kept it simple. You know, Go Educators. The brand of the colors is the color of the brand is gold and black. So I wanted to keep the book gold and black, and I wanted to keep it really simple, because it's really not about the cover of the book. It's more about what's in it, in the information that you get from it. Let's see. In terms of any further additions that I have for the book. Of course, I do believe that I'm going to probably update the book maybe in a few years or so, because there's always new information coming out. So I do believe that I'm going to update the book or probably have different versions of it. And I've also been reaching out to different people like Dr. Bruce Perry to write the foreword. So I am fingers crossed, hoping that he will be interested in writing a foreword, and so we could edit it that way. And even if he wants to add things in, he could add things in as well, because this is much needed information, especially from a perspective of an adult that has been through many of the situations and circumstances concerning the students that I write about. I grew up in an impoverished neighborhood for the first several years of my life, and I experienced so many adverse childhood experiences during that time that I was one of those students. I wasn't one with the behaviors to actually problem behaviors is what I would say. I didn't have problem behaviors, meaning that I wasn't interrupting instruction and things of that sort. But I was one of the students that would go in and internalize everything. And I will always, try to be a people pleaser. I would want to please the teachers. I would want to please my dad. So, that can become really damaging when you feel as though no matter what you do or how you do it is never good enough. So, it's really humbling to be able to make it through. And just to give like a quick backstory of some of the ACEs that I experienced when my mom and dad was married. My dad was very abusive. He was an alcoholic. He would hit my mom all the time. We've seen him hit her, spit on her, and so many different things like that. And, we used to sit there with my mom and be torn in between the two. You love both of your parents, and you're trying to figure out why your dad is being so mean to your mom, but you still hold love for him too. So it was like one of those situations where it can really eat at you. And I know what brought me through it, because the abuse went on to my mom actually left him. But after she left him, we went to live with my grandma, and she lived in a really poor section of North Philly. And it seems like everything that we were experiencing with my dad, it just escalated once it got there. And it escalated really quickly. She had another baby by another man. So that was her fifth child at the time. And she was only 32, 33. So you can imagine she didn't have a job. She was dependent on the child support from my dad and pretty much the money that my grandma was giving her to survive. But shortly after she became pregnant, her boyfriend, her new boyfriend, was murdered. So it was like one thing after the next with her. And it finally just got to a place where she couldn't handle it, and it broke her, and she slipped into a depression. And during that time, when she was in her depression, we missed a lot of school, like tons of school. It was so bad to the point where we had truancy officers coming to our house, to see what was going on. And it finally ended where she died of suicide. She really just gave up her will to live. And unfortunately, I was the person there that found her dead body, because the house was so small. It was only 2 bedrooms. So the night when she actually passed or, died of suicide, I was sleeping with her, and my baby sister was sleeping with her. So just to come from that and be able to deliver the information that I can now, because I know how it feels to go through horrific things when you're young and all you need is love. And I experienced that type of love from the other side of my family, because my dad has a lot of siblings, and they were there to, really embrace myself and my siblings and show us that despite what we've been through, we can still be successful, we can still do well in school, and we can still thrive. And just knowing that made me go to school every single day when I was an educator, a school psychologist, with that in mind. Like, if I made it through, these kids can make it through as well. And I treat all my students just like they're my kids. I expect a lot from them. Of course, it varies with their situations, it varies with their abilities and all, but I always expect the best from each child, whatever their best is. And we can't just generalize and expect all students to get A's all the time, or, perform at the top of their class. That's not it. We have to really be, mindful of what they're capable of doing and really encourage them from there and meet them where they are. So that's it in terms of the book.
Wow. Thank you so much, Nicole, for sharing your story. This is really powerful, thought-provoking, educational. Please feel free if anyone wants to unmute your mic. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, we would love to hear from you at this time. So please ask questions at this time. And I actually have a question, Nicole. You mentioned because of the wealth of information in your book, each chapter could be a book within itself.
Yes.
Do you see other books on the horizon in your future?
I actually do. I'm trying to give it a little time. I have ideas already for other books. Also, just writing about poverty within itself, because we know how damaging poverty can be. And of course, that can be an entire book. But yes, I plan on writing several more books.
Amazing. Okay. Are there any other questions for Nicole? Please feel free to have this conversation with her today. We have 30 more minutes.
Nicole, this is Kevin again. You had mentioned Kindle Direct. You use that to format your book. How does that work? Is this a subscription base or is it an app?
No, so you just go online to KDP, Amazon.com, I believe it is, and you sign in and you create an account. And after you create the account, they literally take you step by step, starting with filling in the title and from there on out. And when it comes to the actual content of the book, you literally just upload your document onto the platform and they take care of it from there.
Great. Did you find you had to do any dusting up of the final manuscript, or was it pretty press ready?
Well, to me, there's always room for improvement because I thought it was press ready when, I submitted it. But then when you go back in, I saw a couple of spacing errors here and there. And I don't know if it was on my part or KDP part, but there's always room for improvement. But I believe it is pretty press ready the way it is. Just a couple of errors here and there with spacing.
So from your process of writing the book to the editing process, how long in that whole process? I believe you said it was 1.5 years total. How long was the editing process before publication?
So the editing, it was 2 different times that I edited. It was one time with one of my colleagues. We went through and see if we needed to add anything on or, what can be taken out. And then the second time I met with another editor and for the grammar and things of that sort to make sure that everything was good. She was an English teacher and she actually wrote the foreword.
Okay. So there's a question, does the library own this book? And the answer is we will be purchasing it.
Thank you. The library does not own it. This library or
PCOM Library. Yes, we have a leisure collection that we're going to be unveiling to the public. So I'm excited that we're going to own it and I cannot wait to read it. And that's the comments that we're getting in the chat as well. So this is exciting. We look forward to reading your book.
Okay, thank you. What I was thinking when I read that, I was thinking about like the rights to the book, because when you submit on Kindle, they give you an option to continue to own your book or for them to own it. and you have a choice. You can choose either way, but if you decide to own it, then you have to copyright it and all. So, it's protected.
Yes. We have a question from J.S. Smith. Will you be able to read online? Is there an ebook version of your book?
There's not an ebook version yet. I still have to do a lot of research into that and commit again to making the audio book. No, so not yet.
Okay. Awesome.
And Jaya, it is available. I know some people like ebooks, so you can either buy the ebook or the physical copy that's available.
I actually like physical, but I was wondering, because I know the library was going to purchase it, but I have no problem getting the physical book as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any more questions or comments at this time? Okay, so we are at 12:35. If there aren't any more questions, Nicole, we would like to thank you on behalf of PCOM Library and our PCOM community for sharing with us today. This has been, like I said, very informative, and I cannot wait to obtain my copy of the book as well. I'd also like to thank our attendees for attending your presentation. And just to let everyone know that our author series presentations are archived on our PCOM Library YouTube channel. So feel free to share this session with anyone that you want to. And again, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Nicole. I hope that everyone has a great rest of your day. And there is a link in the chat box to our YouTube channel and it should take about a day or two before this is live. So thank you again, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
And thank you,
Nicole.